morning, everyone. I'm at Russ Nature Reserve today, so I got up nice and early. I got this beautiful landscape, kind of minimalist shot. I hiked all the way across to this mixed prairie over here. It's kind of sparse right now because it's still early spring, so nothing's really grown right now. But I got these beautiful, with my small telephoto, some beautiful like minimalist shots, just the landscape as the sun rose. And then there's all the rolling kind of mist over the prairie because it's kind of it's a little chilly right now, but it's gonna warm up. It'll be a nice day, I think. So it's a pretty good start. I'm really loving spring so far. I missed it. You wake up nice and early before dawn, really, and the birds are singing. It creates some really beautiful moments like this and some amazing like sunrises. All right, next up, I'm just moving along the trail here. So got some morning dew basically situated on this grass over here, and I'm kind of centered on kind of the lens focus basically on a little patch where it's still lit up by the sunlight that's just hitting right over it. I think kind of creates this really dreamy, ethereal kind of look to it. Seemingly macro with an extension tube once again. And it's kind of got this nice little beautiful bokeh with like the out of focus in the background. It's kind of interesting to look at just because, the tips of each grass blade have one little just, water droplet there. Using my small telephoto, just kind of, zooming real close and just looking at getting the real finer details. For my settings, I'm zoomed in at 140 millimeters here, just getting real nice and close. I'm using a contact polarizing filter just to, not overexpose so much the water droplets basically. And then, I also, it kind of helps deepen and saturate the colors as well. But I'm at a 40th of a second, f10 and ISO 800. And I'm also switching kind of between autofocus and manual focus, just kind of experiment and see what I can come up with my own, when I am in control of focus. One thing I kind of realized actually without even trying to is today's Earth Day is when I'm filming this. And I am actually shooting pretty locally, just like 6-minute drive from my house, which I think is kind of interesting. But I feel like that's kind of more important for, a lot of photographers basically if they travel around a lot. I love to go on, far off locations, that can be like, up to an hour away and stuff like that. I definitely feel like there's more of an importance, when you shoot locally, just because, it saves on gas, which is good for the environment, of course, always. It helps you appreciate, what's really, around you. The sunrise, it wasn't a few days ago, honestly, that I realized that prairie over here would have a nice, be a nice position, out to the east, and just seeing how the sunrise is there. I never even thought about that, so I'm definitely going to revisit this location later on, maybe this year, and then try some pretty much when the prairie's blooming with wildflowers, and then see how that goes. Because I'm already pre-visualizing, kind of like a wide angle shot, maybe with just, the wildflowers in the foreground focus and stuff, and just have the sunrise come up right over that in that beautiful, golden light. Anyways, back to what I was saying, shooting locally I feel like is very important. It makes you feel more interested in the locations around you. You can go to a foreign country and photograph that, but I feel like this kind of to me is like almost metaphorically speaking kind of like my backyard. It's just kind of there, it's close by, and I can visit as many times as I want, and it's going to be different every time, because nature's just always evolving throughout the year. I just feel like it's really important to consider, especially if you want to shoot locally, because I bet you if you really look at, because I look at it a lot on Google Maps just to explore and see what I can find, and I'm still finding new locations. The other day I found one, a friend of mine actually showed me. It was called Morris Reserve in Bellbrook. I never even thought about, I never seen it on Google Maps, it's just kind of out of the way on like a side road basically, and that place is gorgeous, and I definitely want to explore that more. So that's just one example that I can think of recently, but yeah, I feel like you just really got to explore your possibilities and just do your research, find locations. There's just so much out there, and I bet there can't be too many excuses for most photographers. I feel like most of them have beautiful locations that they can go to that are just honestly right outside the door for them. So you don't have to go to like Patagonia and all these other crazy locations, Of course, on the flip side, I'd love to go there someday personally for me. I've never been there. Yeah, I just think it's really important, just shoot local. So I just came back from the meadow where I was photographing that little grass and doing it kind of like a macro style. Just out of curiosity, I kind of went back to the prairie here for a second, just to kind of see how the landscape evolved so far with the the sun coming out. And it's just really interesting to see how it evolved from just in the morning. It was just right before sunrise. It just had this kind of moody and atmospheric kind of look to it, but like at this it's kind of light and dreamy at the same time. Alright, once again continuing with the macro here, I've actually got this kind of dead tree stump, as you can tell, and I just really like the abstract kind of cracks and the details and just all the lines that kind of show the weathering. And for my settings here, I got 1/60th of a second, f4.5, and ISO 1250. And once again I'm using a polarizer filter, and I'm zoomed in at 135 millimeters. And I'm just doing it handheld just because I find it's much more easier to work with than using a tripod. Sometimes I think tripods are great for stability, of course, and especially with me because I have shaky hands, but at the same time they're kind of I find them very limiting. If you're always using them, then it's like sometimes it really doesn't open up all the possibilities that are available to you. With this example, at least I'm gonna shoot a handheld. One little technique you can try out that will really elevate your macro photography and your wildflower photography game is just to get a little, cheap little water spray bottle, basically, something like that. And then this is good for if it's a really dry, day, but you want to simulate kind of some water droplets. Is just spray this on whatever you're photographing, and you can do this pretty much on anything, honestly, not even just flowers. But it's really cool because it just kind of creates that misty, effect. Some people may not, like it as much, maybe just because it's not natural or something like that. And I certainly would rather have it be, natural, actual rainwater. I feel like that just makes it more, kind of authentic and genuine photograph. But I think this is really a good technique if you want to just experiment, especially maybe in like your backyard or something like that. I'm just going to try it here on these flowers right here, see what happens. Now, one thing I will say about this water droplet technique is that you don't want to overdo it. You don't want to spray the same flower too many times. Not so much to damage the flower, or anything, or harm it, but it just if you do it too much, it kind of like overwhelms the petals, and it makes the photo look unnatural, at least in my opinion. So maybe just one spray, or at most two, and then if it's a bigger flower, try and cover the surface area, because make it look, I guess, a little more natural. If you just have it in one spot, it just look kind of weird. But with these really tiny flowers that I got here, it's just I did like one or two sprays at most, and that should cover it. Another thing is with kind of the daylight, at least right now, you got all these tricky kind of shadows in the woodland here, and I've been using kind of my backside, photographing basically with the sun behind my back, and then kind of moving it around, and then I'm really paying attention to kind of the background behind the flowers here, because I don't want any kind of tricky lighting spots that I find that kind of distracting, because I'm using a shallow depth of field with f8 here. But if there's still out of focus in the background some like kind of bright spots, I just find like that really detracts from the entire photo. So in a way, what I'm kind of simulating is that I want it to kind of look like an overcast day, basically, and so that it makes much more kind of softer diffused light. And that's also why I'm using this little diffuse filter on my external flash here, so just to kind of further soften the light. Let me tell you more about Russ Nature Reserve here. I really haven't said too much about the location, but basically it has 90 acres of mixed prairie and woodlands, and it's pretty much most of the habitat here. But you get a lot of nice woodland birds. You're not gonna get any waterfowl, obviously. There's no real big pond, but you get a lot of woodpeckers, tons of those here. And then you get a lot of the prairie birds, of course, like I was talking about earlier, like the eastern bluebirds, tree swallows, any of those nest box or cavity nester. Basically, historically the property was left to the Greene County Parks and Trails by the late Fritz and Dolores Russ, and so they basically donated they own this whole property basically, and then they donate it as a legacy, honoring their passion for nature and education, which is pretty cool to think about. You know, I talk about it a lot, but these parks and stuff, it seems like a lot of them are donated. Like they just kind of give them away, especially if they pass away, which is really just kind of fascinating. And then they usually end up naming them usually after the people that owned it. So yeah, it's got 90 acres. There's a bunch of hiking trails. There's actually a lot of these, they call them tree identification trails along the way, where you can actually, it has like little signs basically that you can learn more about trees. And then it has like details about the height, you know, what kind it is and stuff. And so they place them around, you know, each respective tree. And there's quite a few of them. I think there's about 10 to 15 of them total throughout Rust here. And it's really interesting to just learn more about trees. When it comes to bodies of water, there actually is a small pond situated near the parking lot. There's a high fence garden where you can kind of just see different kind of botanicals. There's actually a tree nursery, a butterfly garden for like kind of like a monarch way station basically, that's been certified. And then not only that, but in the prairie and meadow that's out kind of towards the parking lot, there's actually a bee apiary. So this place really is just, you know, it's got a lot going for it. You know, it's got a lot going on. It's actually a fairly newer property within like the past 10 years or so. But I mean, it's honestly just beautiful nonetheless. And I've gotten a lot of my favorite photographs here. And like I said, it's just like, at least for me, it's a stone's throw away from my house. It's definitely a place I need to visit more often, especially in the early morning, you know, because this place gets a lot of dog walkers, and I'm actually kind of standing right by now, but there's a nature playscape where a lot of children like to go to. You know, early morning definitely seems to be the best time, I'd say, to come here for photography, nature photography specifically. Alright, so I'm switching gears now. I'm doing wildlife photography, or bird photography specifically. I'm noticing a few warblers flying around, and I'm kind of here at the dead prairie over here, and I'm seeing some like sparrows basically flitting around. So traveling pretty light. I just got my chest harness on, obviously my telephoto lens and my binoculars, and then obviously this camera to film any video. So we're just gonna see what happens here, and then whatever happens here, we'll see. But I'm actually gonna head on back as well to the prairie and get some like photos of some tree swallows and eastern bluebirds. I'm back on the meadow loop here. It's pretty funny. This family walked by, and they thought all these tree swallows that keep flying around me, they thought they were playing tag, and I'm like, yeah, I almost was like, nah, it's more like life or death, I guess, because they're trying to take up residence in this bluebird nest box over here. It looks like some bluebirds have kind of like, they're trying to defend it, but they're outnumbered. You know, there's like at least 8 to 10 of these tree swallows. They're just like swarming around. They keep trying to like keep landing on the nest box, as I'm seeing here, and just. But then I see this male and female bluebird. They kind of are. Yep. Now they're back. It's just, yeah, it's a struggle of trying to find housing, you know, and it kind of is in a way life or death. But just amazing. They just keep flying like right next to my ear. Honestly, it's very hard to photograph them, to say the least. It's just, yeah. Too much going on. To say the least, it's entertaining to watch, but yeah, there's obviously, to them it's pretty serious. Now, if you're wondering kind of like my thoughts, I guess, on nest boxes, you know, trying to pretty much help like birds raise their young and all that kind of stuff. Basically, I believe invasive species are bad. So like house sparrows, any non-native stuff, European starlings. Obviously, they're still birds, but like, you know, they're not native. So the problem with the invasive species is that, you know, they drive out native species because they have no natural predators in kind of the whole life cycle here. So I know that's a big problem in Ohio. Is basically house sparrows, starlings are probably the two most common ones. They can drive out bluebirds, house wrens, you know, anything that's like native. Tree swallows are native. I do see this as okay with tree swallows versus bluebirds, just because it's natural. It's a natural competition. They're both native species to Ohio, so it makes sense. switch back to my macro setup here. I'm almost done for the day, but I just wanted to capture a few more the wildflowers as they bloom right now. I thought this one was interesting because I was facing towards the sun this time, and it made this very bright, vivid kind of yellow kind of photograph, basically, with just the midday sun like this. But then I switched around and had my back facing towards the sun, and I had my shadow right over top of these flowers, and it's just really fascinating to see, kind of like almost like white balance in a way. The way just the color and the whole mood of the photograph change with the two images. And it's funny because it's just like it's the same subject though, but just the way the execution of it was very much different, and I think that's really interesting. So, and then on the second one where I was facing with the shadow over the flowers, I was doing like a top-down perspective, and it made this really kind of moody, kind of cool color. Cool as in like the blues. It had like a really kind of bluish, greenish tone to it. When the other one with the directly sunlight on it was more like a warm, it really emphasized the yellow of the flower. So I just thought it was a really interesting thing to add. And for my settings, I was using 200th of a second, f8, and ISO 800. And I was just shooting it handheld, extension tube again, and then no flash this time. Alright guys, that pretty much concludes my trip to Russ Nature Reserve today. It's been actually very productive. This might be one of my favorite spots I'll have to return to again. I got some future compositions for like sunrises over in the prairie, and some wicked trees in the meadow. But anyways, also if you prefer to receive email, I just want to point out I made a free ebook because that's what everyone else does, it seems like. So I wrote an ebook, put some photos on there. It's called Nature Photography as Art, 10 Tips to Unlock Your Creative Potential. So it's a free download, obviously, if you sign up for my newsletter. And if you sign up for my newsletter, you'll also get, tips, just kind of like updates from the field of my travels, stuff like that. I'll give you share the links to my blog posts, my videos. It's kind of like a one-stop shop, it kind of shows you everything. And I'll update you on new photos that add to the website, stuff like that. So all that kind of cool stuff. So if you care about any of my stuff, my content, and all the work I produce, yeah, it'd be great. I highly recommend that you follow the email newsletter, and then yeah, you definitely get that free ebook. It's about 30 pages, I believe. It's got photos of mine I've taken over the years, just some basic tips to get you started if you're a beginner, kind of nature photographer, or you're kind of inspired and aspire to be a nature photographer at least. So anyways, yeah, this is it for my trip here. I got about 250 images or files I got to sift through when I get home. But I got some great stuff, and I can't wait to share it with you guys and upload on the website. So that should be it. It's been Russ Nature Reserve, and I hope you can get out here. Have a good day, guys. Thank you.